Hey, good afternoon. You have Gina and Shannon coming back at you. It's end of January. Can you believe it? As we record this, we are staring down the beginning of February, and it's nice to have winter progressing. Are you a winter fan, Shannon?
No,
No.
I'm very much a summer person.
Yes, same here. I know you like the hot weather. I like the sunshine. I miss the sunshine. We get a lot of gray here in Cincinnati in the winter.
I think we're on day like 5 with no sun.
Yes.
I need sun.
Yeah. I think the gray is worse than the cold for me. So hopefully we will get a little sunshine coming up soon. But we are coming back at you with last time we met a couple of months ago, maybe now, before the end of the year, we talked a little bit about kids and trying to help kids be a little healthier, eat a little healthier, which is no small task. And we talked a little bit about the young kids, so babies, toddlers, and how to kind of get things started off on the right foot with them if you have little ones. And so I think today we're going to talk a little bit more about what happens when they get to preschool or kind of elementary school age, and what are some good strategies to try to keep them eating healthier once they get to that age. So a number of thoughts I think that have come to mind as we've brainstormed this a little bit. And one of the things that I think about initially is, since they're in school, they're meeting kids, they're probably, hanging out with friends a little bit more, doing, play dates, whatever it is. Um, and, one of the tough things might be, okay, well, I feed them a certain way at home, but then they're hanging out with friends or at school. They can, they buy their lunch and they make their own choices. And how do you handle that so that they're, you know, um, one, not questioning, why does everybody else eat this way and I have to eat this way, and kind of keeping them, I guess, smart about how they make their choices. So one of my initial thoughts there is, I think we touched on it last time, is that forbidding certain foods usually ends up, backfiring. So, tell them you're never allowed to have anything with sugar, or you can't eat cake, or you can't eat chips is typically going to make them want it more, right? Because it's the nature of, well, all of us really, but that's how kids are. So, I think rather than forbidding that, maybe you don't have them in your house, but if they go to a friend's house for a birthday party or something, just talking to them and educating them a little bit more about why you eat a certain way, and them making their own choices when they're at somebody else's house. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, definitely like leading by example and educating them and getting them involved in the process of making the foods. I think then it just becomes part of who they are and what they know. And so then it kind of normalizes it more, because it is very much like you'll go to friends' houses or hang out and they'll have like pizza nights are fine, like doing fun things. I remember lots of times hanging out with friends, staying the night. You'd have a pizza party, you drink the Mountain Dew, you watch TV all night, and then you'd feel like crud the next day, but then you go back to eating normal at your house.
Mm-hmm.
But those, that kind of becomes like a treat instead of like your normal eating pattern. That's like your treat. But if you can teach them, like, say you get the whatever little calendar is for the meals at school, and it's like hamburgers on this day with fries, and then pizza the next day, and then sloppy joes with, I don't know what they eat anymore. I'm old officially. um, but
Mm-hmm.
if you can interest them in packing, like if interest them in making food, you can also try and interest them in packing their food, and so you have a little bit more control of what they eat and making sure it's good for them. And then also it actually fuels them, because some of those kids eat so early that they need more, or else they're starving before they get out of school, and then they've got practice to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I think we touched very briefly on that last time, that getting them involved really can make a difference. And if they, from a young age, if they're involved with, like you said, it's either packing lunch, or, we talked a little bit about if you have a small garden, not everybody has time for a big garden, but even if you had a few pots of plants, vegetables that you can grow in the summer, and kind of teach kids through, growing and picking their own food, they get so excited about that. If they can go out and pick fresh food off of, out of the garden, that's something they get really excited about. And then, yes, depending on what age they are, what's the right ability for them to be able to participate in making the meals. So maybe initially it's, making their own sandwich, or it's, if you have in the refrigerator already cut up fruits and veggies, maybe they're the ones that are portioning that out into their lunch each morning. And kind of helping you at the same time as just learning what's the right, way to eat. And you're right that it's fun to do pizza ice cream, with friends at parties. And I think that's partially too where the education comes in, that, kind of talking to them about, hey, this is how we eat most of the time. We eat healthy foods because it helps us grow big, strong, play sports well. And, it really helps us to grow the way that we're supposed to, but it doesn't hurt to have something, else every so often. You just don't want to do that all the time. And I think to a certain extent, if you can relate the story, a little bit to them, that'll help them understand why, maybe somebody else eats differently, and that's okay, but it's not the way that you should eat all the time. It's okay for a treat, but not something that's something you want to do, on a regular basis.
Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, maybe not draw too much attention to it, just because the more that they're focusing on it, the more like, but why? Why not? And then you're just like, well, because I said so. And eventually that's just going to backfire. But I mean, but if you can have like all your healthy treats and stuff, and then like if you have, I don't know, junk food in the house for them to have on those special nights, like it's pizza night or something, or movie night, like say you just get it like right before you're going to go, like you're on the way to picking up a friend, you stop at Myers and say, hey, you guys each get to pick out a couple of sodas and a couple of junk food items, and then that's on the way to go to your house, watch the movie. You can eat that then, but then the rest of the time you're like, okay, breakfast is this, lunch is this, dinner's this.
Yeah.
But then also where you store the healthy food versus the junk food, like if you are going to keep it in the house, maybe make the healthier food where it's easy for them to grasp. Like they can go grab a yogurt, or they can go grab whatever veggies, fruits that you have available, granolas. But then if it's like the cookies and the chips and fill in blank here, you have that higher up where they have to at least come get you, or you will hear them climbing to go get it. And you can be like, this is the third time I've got cookies for you, no more. Whereas if they can just get it, you have no idea until you go in there, it's like empty box, perfect.
Yes, very good point. Accessibility is everything, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you're right. Not make a big deal of it, and kind of make it clear that it's in a certain situation is when you have those kinds of things. It's not in every night, I'm going to grab cookies, or it's not in every night, I'm going to have chips with dinner. It's you're kind of making it clear that that's a special occasion. It's movie night, or it's, whatever it is, that you indulge in some of those foods. That distinction, I think definitely can help. So yeah, it's for kids that age, again, it's not forbidding them from ever having that stuff, because that generally just doesn't work. We talked a little bit too last time, even for the young kids, that I think this applies in elementary age kids too, that, just having them continue to try new things, even if it's something that they've said they don't like,
Right.
Keep having them try it. And, without forcing it on them, say, I need you to try a bite of that. If you don't like it, that's okay. Here's something else good for you that you can eat that that you maybe know that they like. But kind of continuing to expose them to those things so that their repertoire kind of keeps expanding. I think part of the challenge is if there are only 2 or 3 things that are healthy that they eat, once they get older, that becomes problematic too, because, you can't always find that stuff, or, that pushes them more towards some of the stuff that's not good for them, because they have such a limited palate for anything else that they'll eat.
Yeah, well, I think going back to having them help you prep it, like if I give Finn some vegetables that I just cut up and put on his plate, he's not going to try them. But if he's standing next to me as a stool that I take up to the counter, if he's standing on that, and as I'm cutting stuff, if I just scoot it over towards him, he will voluntarily pick it up and put it in his mouth. And he's like, not so bad, or he'll spit it back out. I mean, it goes one way or the other.
Yeah.
But it's higher odds of success of him actually trying it. If I'm like, hey, I'm doing this. This is something mommy's doing. And he's like, cool. So I think if you carry that on, and then they just get used to like, okay, it's meal prep time, or it's dinner time, I'm going to go help mom cut the veggies, and I'll sneak a few bites of that while I'm doing it. I think kids get finicky. Finn was eating berries by the bucket load. Now he hates berries.
Really?
Yeah. And so I was talking, like, my friend's like, yeah, they never grow out of that. And so like they'll go through bananas, and you'll have a second grader that ate 2 pounds of bananas this week, and the next week they hate bananas. So just having like a variety of fruits and stuff that they're interested in or willing to try, or like you just sort of keep them stocked. But if they're eating them in mass quantities, maybe not buy them in mass quantities, or else you end up with a lot of moldy blueberries. And
Right,
so,
maybe not the Costco blueberries anymore.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he ate an entire Costco thing of raspberries in the Costco store.
Oh, wow.
And then he ate a second one that week. So we went back and got more. Will not touch raspberries.
He burnt himself out on them, huh?
Yep. So I'm like, all right, fine. So then you get creative and you put them in muffins or breads or smoothies, or you just eat them as they are.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
kind of an interesting topic too, is, hiding some of the healthy stuff in foods, and interested to hear what you think about that. I mean, there's certainly ways that, I have cooked things like pasta sauce before, and I will put lentils or beans in there, and I get my handy little immersion blender out and I
Mhm.
mix it all together so they don't really know it's in there.
I'm a huge fan.
Um, or yeah, or I know my sister will often make cookies that have zucchini in them, and you can't necessarily see the zucchini in there.
Yep.
So I do think that's definitely a good way to get them to get more of that into their diet. I
Mhm.
do think it's also a good idea to, after they eat it, sort of explain, hey, this is a healthier version of X food because it had this in it. So let them decide they like it first, and then kind of let them know what was in there too, so that they don't think, well, it's great to eat chocolate cookies wherever I go because these mom says that they're okay.
Yeah, no, my sister and I learned to be suspicious of brownies because we found out after the fact. I mean, we were adults when my mom finally fessed up to it. And she would shred up, and then we're talking like the immersion blender, and make them all grated fine or just liquid almost. And she would use zucchini and carrots and apples and put them in the cakes and the brownies. And so we always had brownies around. But like, this is the best thing ever.
Wow.
But because we had them so often, we were only allowed to have like a piece here and like a piece in the afternoon, a piece in the evening. Like you couldn't eat a pan of brownies. But she also never really like stopped us. And then later, as we grew up, and we're like, we can never make our brownies taste the same. She goes, oh, by the way, that's because they're full of zucchini. We're like, what? It's fine. Like they
Yeah.
taste great. Like they still tasted fine. They had the same texture. They had the same color. Like they weren't off-putting at all. And then we're like, what is wrong with it? Oh, they were full of vegetables. That
Yeah,
cocoa and stuff really does a number on it, so it's fine.
it does. I think there are so many more ways now, or so many more maybe better recipes out there now too, with things that are made with better ingredients. So I think we made some brownies not too long ago that had, I think it was either the black beans or chickpeas that we used.
Ah, yeah.
It might have been chickpeas that we used in them, and they were really tasty. I think, you get that combination if you make it with that plus, I think it might have used maple syrup or honey or something like that, and the chocolate, cocoa
Yeah.
powder. Still a healthier version of a treat, and I do think it's good to explain, that's what we're doing, and it's even though maybe you didn't find out until much later.
Right.
I don't know if kids would, kind of turn their nose up the next time if they had known that originally, but yeah, I think it's, you're kind of, maybe that goes back to also having them help you in the kitchen. So, maybe they're seeing you make it. And a lot of times if you see what goes into your food, you're a little bit more comfortable versus somebody just handing you something that looks a little suspect. And then you're tainted, I guess, before you even try it.
Well, and then they'll sit there and they'll know that there's a healthy alternative. Like you can make it the real decadent way that is actually written and how it should be. Um, or you can try and be like, okay, I've eaten a lot of crap here lately. Let's see if I can ease my way into eating some more things and find other ways to get like your vitamins and minerals in. Just because sometimes you're just not going to get them.
Yeah.
But
There's some things it's hard to substitute,
yeah.
but yeah, I think there are a lot of decent alternatives these days that help to keep them from having a total sugar high all the time.
Well, and like there's a lot of things like going back to being in school and then immediately having to go to practice. Like when I didn't have a lot of snacks, like in elementary school is when I really started getting into sports. And it was like, okay, school's out, go to your homework. Here's maybe a granola bar or Carnation instant breakfast was the big thing that you had to drink. And that was my snack, and it was awful. But that's what I had time for. That's why my mom had time to get like ready for me before I was out on the soccer field, or I was at the karate studio, or I was at fill in blank here. But now like smoothies, all the blenders are a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make smoothies in there. You can put protein powders in there that actually taste good and don't just gunk up. There's not as much sugar. And so you can kind of like throw those in those little NutriBullet things that actually turn into a cup. And so it's in there, you're done, and then you just hand it off as opposed to trying to have to pour and making a mess and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. My NutriBullet is my best friend. And I did actually test. So you can make smoothies in advance and freeze them. So if you put them in like a mason jar and freeze it, because maybe the kids aren't coming home between practice or between school and practice. So if you put it in the freezer, it took probably 4 to 5 hours for mine to thaw when I just kind of took it out and let it sit out. So that's another option too, is maybe, have them grab it. It's still frozen. And then throughout the day it thaws, they bring
Did it separate out at all?
not really.
No.
No, I just, I shook it out a little bit. But no, it didn't really separate that much. Cause I blended it all in advance and just put it in the jar.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you've got all the, metal straws out there now. They could just take a metal straw with them and have that as their snack too. And there's tons of good stuff that you can put in a smoothie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think on the subject of sports, we talked a little bit too about just making sure, that they are staying active because, for a lot of kids, it's not an issue. And, I think the tendency anymore is that kids play more sports than what we can keep up with. But, you mentioned before too about, seasonal. So maybe they play sports in one season and not in the other. And their tendency will be to sit down and play video games, during the season that they're not. And just kind of the importance of keeping them moving no matter what, and kind of brainstorming different ways to do that, even if it's not playing another sport. What are some other ways that you can keep them active in that off season?
Yeah. And I think just being like diligent of keeping them well-rounded, and then also not making every single season like life or death of that season. So there's a lot of like select soccer and clubs and travel here, there, and yonder. But find rec leagues, like if they still like soccer, but they also want to play basketball or softball or baseball or fill in things. Find like a rec league, like at local church, like Upwards. They have the Upwards basketball, and so it's a lot of fun. They still learn. The kids like learn the rules of the game. They can be competitive, but it's definitely not like win or die kind of crazy hours, 7,000 practices up until 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But and just doing stuff like that. And then making sure that when you're teaching them, like if they're going from sport to sport to sport and school to school to school, there was a commercial, I'm trying to remember what the brand is, but they were talking about fueling your kids right. And, oh, Johnny's looking a little slow today, but they made him look like a donut and he was a goalie. And then like, oh, wow, Eric's running really fast. And they were showing him, it was eating or drinking a certain thing, but it was all about being veggies and fruit filled. Yeah. And then like the kids that were just sitting on the field, kind of half asleep, they were like looking like a box of donuts or a hamburger or a bunch of fries. Right. So be like, okay, if you want to be fast and strong, you need to eat these things or else you're going to feel like crap and fall asleep on the field over here.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely relating it to how it's going to impact their day-to-day lives. And the younger kids, they probably don't necessarily feel it when they're out there. If they're not eating good stuff, I don't know that they're going to feel like, oh gosh, I don't have any energy, because kids always seem to have energy. But making that association early, I think is important, because certainly when we become adults, I can feel the difference when I'm, out trying to go for a run and I've been eating junk versus, eating good stuff. So just keeping that association there, especially, once they get high school and college, they definitely would, I think, feel that difference. So creating that habit and that association when they're younger will go a long way.
Well, and then when they're in high school and college and they're sent off their own, if they have no idea as to what goes into making the food, then they won't make it. They'll eat whatever's on campus, and then they're like, okay, I really wish I would have known that hard-boiled eggs actually do keep for 2 or 3 weeks. It's fine. Or a salad's actually not going to wilt in a day and a half or something like that. And they would keep good food in their dorm, or at least make better choices when they're out.
Yeah.
So being like, Chipotle's open. That burrito's fine. 7 days in a row, 3 times a day.
Yeah, I think there's a tendency, whether it's don't have time to deal with it or it's, you feel like you should do it because you're taking care of the kids, that you do everything yourself, and
Yeah.
to some extent. And I think this is totally sort of off subject, but when I was in college, I studied abroad in college for a year, and there was another guy that went on the same program as me. And so we were going to be in Paris for a year studying, and we were living in a dorm. So we had to do our own laundry, we had to do all that kind of stuff. He was 21 years old and had never been taught how to do laundry. And I'm like, your parents sent you to a foreign country and you don't know how to do laundry. I had to teach him how to do his laundry. I'm like, so similar to the food.
Right.
Eventually they're going to have to figure it out, how to do it for themselves. And so the earlier you can kind of create the habits, the better.
Yeah. I mean, we're not saying like they have to become a giant sous chef, like sitting over the stove and like getting grease popped on them. But, if you just teach them how to like scoop out the appropriate amount of different things, give them measuring cups, like Finn is 1 and he's getting to where he cannot scoop really well and then pour. But if I hand him whatever I've scooped out, he will pour it in. So if he's 1, I feel like you could get more coordinated as you go.
Yeah.
And be like,
Definitely.
here, I need this full. And you say, okay.
Yes.
Then they'll eventually learn it. They can do it on their own.
Exactly. And it does, certainly is probably more effort and frustration when you're doing the teaching, but hopefully it pays off, once they are more like high school age and they can better take care of themselves and do a lot of their own, stuff versus not being able to do that because they never learned it coming through. So,
Right.
So I do think that's, something that's important to set that foundation, even if it is a little bit more effort early on.
Yeah, but they catch on quickly and they like to help. They actually want to be involved instead of being like they're shunned somewhere. And then they also learn that food takes effort instead of just like, hey, dinner's ready and this amazing meal has appeared either from a restaurant or from your own hands. It just appeared.
Yes.
They don't know how it was made or how it arrived. They just know they get to eat and then they get to leave again. But if they actually have to help, then they're like, okay, this is going to taste better if I do this, or I like this better, so I'm going to help more on this end of the deal.
Yes, definitely. So many things to think about when it comes to kids and kind of teaching the good habits from the start. And it's certainly not easy, but very worthwhile and pays off in the end.
And then they're not 21 learning how to do laundry.
Exactly. In a foreign country.
Perfect. I feel like that happens way more than anybody talks about.
Probably. Yeah. I was very surprised, but I'm sure, there are so many anymore that don't have those skills coming out of the house. So don't make food one of them.
Right. Let laundry be the thing.
That's
laundry's
right.
easier to teach anyway.
It is. It's much easier.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good. Well, we are probably at our time for today. So yes, think about those things when it comes to your elementary school kids. And then next time maybe we'll move up a little bit to the older, teenage years, which have their own set of challenges. But hopefully some of these little tidbits help, or at least get the wheels turning a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we will try not to be another couple months before we come back at it again.
Yeah.
All right. Have a wonderful afternoon, Shannon, and we will talk again soon.